All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to take a trip, a time-traveling trip, to one of the greatest superpowers in history. But this isn't going to be some dry history lesson. No, think of this as the ultimate tourist's guide to the Roman Empire.
Seriously, just imagine for a second. What if you could actually take a trip through time? Where would you even go? Well, for our tour today, we are setting our sights on a very specific moment in time, the Roman Empire, right at its absolute zenith.
This was a period famously known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, and for 200 years, it was this incredible golden age. We're talking about a level of stability, of prosperity, and unity that the world had, well, never really seen before. It stretched all the way from the deserts of Africa right up to the Atlantic coast.
So you ready? Let's dive in. Let's take a tour of this world and really get a feel for what it would have been like to be there, to travel through this amazing empire at the absolute height of its power.
Okay, first things first, let's just wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about here. At its peak, the empire was home to somewhere between 65 and 100 million people. 100 million. To put that into perspective, that's more people than were living in all of Europe at that time. It's just massive.
And you know, this wasn't just one big, uniform group of people. Not at all. It was this incredible melting pot of cultures. You had Italians, Greeks, Gauls, Britons, North Africans, Egyptians. The list just goes on and on. And here's the really mind-blowing part. For 200 years, all these incredibly diverse peoples lived under the same set of laws, all protected by the same peace.
So that brings up a pretty big question, right? How on earth was it even possible to travel across an empire this big and this diverse? Well, the answer, it comes down to the absolute genius of Roman engineering and their knack for organization.
I mean, just look at this. This picture says it all. The Romans didn't just build things, they built them to last. We're talking roads, bridges, aqueducts. And when I say last, I'm not kidding. Some of this stuff is still standing and in some cases still in use today, 2,000 years later. That is just incredible.
And all of this infrastructure, all this building, it made their world surprisingly fast. Let's start with the roads. Their paved roads were absolute masterpieces, better than anything Europe would see for another 1,000 years. Then you had the sea lanes, huge government ships, we're talking giant grain freighters, crossing the Mediterranean. But here's the real kicker, communication. You could send a letter from Rome, and it would get to Alexandria in Egypt in about 10 days. For the ancient world, that is lightning fast.
Okay, so we know how we can get around on our tour. Now let's talk about where we're going, because a trip across the Roman Empire wasn't just one single experience. Oh no, it was really a tale of two completely different halves.
And you can really see the contrast here. Let's say you're touring the East. You're basically a tourist in an ancient world. You go to Greece, and you might see these empty pedestals where famous statues used to be, because they'd been nabbed to decorate some rich Roman's villa. You visit Egypt, and you're walking among temples that were thousands of years old back when Rome was just a bunch of huts. But then you head to the West, places like Gaul, which is modern-day France or Britain or Spain, and it's a totally different story. Here, Roman civilization was a brand new thing. They were building cities from scratch, complete with theaters, baths, and monuments that looked just like the ones back in Rome.
Which, of course, brings us to the grand finale of any Roman tour, the main event. We're going to the heart of it all, the city of Rome itself. For centuries, this was it, the largest, the richest, the most spectacular city on the entire planet.
And just look at this. On one hand, you've got the Colosseum, an absolute marvel of engineering that could seat, almost 50,000 people for the games. And on the other, the Pantheon. I mean, that dome, that incredible open space inside. It is still, to this day, one of the most breathtaking buildings ever made. Period.
And this quote really gets to the heart of their genius. The Romans were masters of concrete, using it on a scale that we've honestly only matched in modern times. Think about that dome on the Pantheon. It's this enormous, solid mass of concrete. And after all this time, it's just as strong and safe as the day the architects first built it. It's just a stunning testament to their skill.
But Rome wasn't just about massive buildings. Their art was incredible too. Roman artists were masters of the portrait, and they were experts at capturing the real essence of a person. You can just feel it looking at this bust, can't you? The confidence, the authority, the sheer force of will it took to build and run an empire this big. These were the faces of the guys in charge.
Okay, so we've seen the grand imperial scale of Rome. But what about everyday life? You know, for regular people. To get a feel for that, we're going to leave the capital city and head to a smaller town, a provincial town, sitting right at the foot of a volcano. We're going to Pompeii.
The thing about Pompeii, what makes it so unbelievably special, is that it is literally a city frozen in time. In the year 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted and just buried the whole town in a thick layer of ash. And in doing so, it preserved everything exactly as it was at that moment. The homes, the shops, the art on the walls, even the graffiti. It's like a perfect photograph of Roman life.
So Pompeii gives us this amazing glimpse into the physical world of the Romans. But a real tour isn't just about the stuff you can see and touch, right? So let's go a little deeper. Let's explore their inner world, what they believed, what they cared about, what kept them up at night.
And what we find is a culture that's really in flux. On the one hand, the rich were living in unbelievable luxury. We're talking silks imported all the way from China, new fruits like peaches showing up on their tables. But on the other hand, intellectually, things were kind of stagnating. Science wasn't really making big new leaps. And spiritually, a lot of people were feeling like the old Roman gods just weren't cutting it anymore. They didn't have good answers, especially about what happens after you die. This created a kind of spiritual vacuum, and all these new, more personal religions from the East started pouring in to fill it. You had the worship of Isis from Egypt, Mithras from Persia, and of course, a new faith that taught about brotherhood and a divine father, Christianity.
But you know, as we all know, golden ages don't last forever. And so our tour has to come to an end, right as this incredible period of peace and stability starts to come apart at the seams.
I mean, think about it. For 200 years, from the time of the first emperor, Augustus, all the way to Marcus Aurelius, the system just worked. You had a line of mostly very capable emperors who kept the peace, managed the empire, and held the whole thing together. But towards the end of Marcus Aurelius' reign, you start to see the cracks. The economy gets shaky, invaders start pressing on the borders, and the emperors who follow are, well, they're not so great.
And this is the crucial takeaway. That remarkable stability, that 200-year peace, it wasn't going to last forever. In fact, it was about to be completely shattered by a full century of revolution, civil war, and straight-up anarchy. And that's where we'll leave our tour, with a final, kind of sobering question. Because the world that came out on the other side of that century of chaos was a totally different place. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? What does it actually look like? What does it feel like when a civilization's golden age finally, truly ends? And maybe more importantly, what lessons are there in their story for us today?